All right, I am going to take up the battle with TikTok. Now, I went ahead and I requested a review. There is no place for me to actually, make a comment or give them any, spoon feeding them the reason why I should be allowed to, have my video out there. I will tell you, though, they said something about me actually, giving historical account on, which is allowed, that I can give a historical account of things that I've actually experienced. And they were talking about regarding, experiencing healthcare and such. My experience of healthcare is the fact that I presented my grandfather's work to them in the hopes of bringing it to the public, in a quicker form, correcting an industry instead of becoming our own. Now, at this point in time, we're our own. And they're still trying to censor us, saying that, because we're not that industry, that we're not allowed to have a voice to speak and we can't actually share. I'm saying bullshit. So let me show TikTok and everybody else in the world where the true expert lies and what he has to say about the very things that they had a problem with me, bringing to the attention of Bill Kinzinger and the world in actually reading, my interactions with him, and that was historical. Let me show you. All right, day in the life, Road to Zion. What Grandpa has to say here is extremely important. Oh, and two, by the way, my grandfather's award in exclusive recognition of exemplary service to the chiropractic profession on the occasion of the celebration of its 100th year. He won the Centennial Award, and then after he did so, they refused to raise their standards. Now, that is a matter of public safety. They're talking about community guidelines. Public safety is at the forefront of my concerns, and I have said so repeatedly. Okay, from the master.
You know that the prefix hypo means below.
No, I don't.
And the prefix hyper means above.
I didn't know.
Well, they do.
Hypo is below?
Yes.
Below hypo.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, we have talked about this CVJ junction between the head and the spine, haven't we?
Yeah.
All right. Now, if you have hypomobility between the skull and the spine, and you have hypermobility between the first vertebra and the second vertebra, you have a complexity of movement in those joints that's kind of like a corkscrew
I
that
guess.
irritates the spinal cord.
Yeah.
So, when you have generated a hypomobility of the occipital atlantal articulations, they in turn, if they stay there, will generate a hypermobility of the articulations between the atlas and the axis and produce this occipital atlantal subluxation complex that produces all this nerve signal interference.
I don't know if I'll ever understand that.
Okay, now that tells you the whole story, and a doctor that's well versed in this terminology,
He knows.
he knows exactly what we're talking about, and you don't have to go through 16 pages of explanation to tell him.
But it just blows my mind.
Now,
You know.
the layman listening to that, it means nothing to him
That's
because
right.
you don't understand what we're talking about.
That's right.
But if I could sit down and explain to him word for word about this and demonstrate what I mean by these terms, he'd say, "Oh, yes, now I see."
Yeah. Well, that's what you did with me, for me, up there on the patio with your skull.
Yes.
I can
So-
understand that, but this other, it just makes me swim.
When I take x-rays of a patient and when they put their head forward like this, that's called flexion.
Yeah.
And if that head doesn't rock on that first vertebra so that the x-rays will show that that gap is wider in the back than it was when it was upright, then we have hypoflexion.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the joint between the first vertebra and the second vertebra, where that process sticks up against the front, if that gap in there is too wide, we know this ligament has stretched out, and that produces a slack joint here, and you get hypermobility. You get too much motion.
Mm-hmm.
So you get too little motion up here, and you get too much motion down here. And it puts the spinal cord and all those nerves and blood vessels coming through there in a bind.
Which upsets the whole apple cart.
Which is an insult to those nerves, and the nerves can't send their signals through there like they're supposed to go, or that irritation will produce new nerve signals right at that spot that will confuse the brain about what to do about them.
Well, I'm glad you know about it, and I'm glad that you can, like your statements right here just kind of blow my mind, but I can, simpler language, like, you know, I understand.
Yeah,
I understand.
I'll say it like this. Too little motion between the head and the first vertebra causes too much motion between the first and second vertebra.
Okay.
And that raises hob with the spinal cord and interferes with the nerve signals.
Right.
And produces nerve signals that shouldn't be produced. And those signals are out of time with need. And the brain will tell the body to do things that's kind of crazy because it hasn't got the proper orders to work on.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
Now that's talking a Dutchman's language.
Yeah. Okay, now what
This is my mom. This is my grandpa. And I look a little bit like both of them. Yeah, I look quite a bit like grandpa, actually. They used to call mom Little Dog. Now, I'm going to share with you pretty much what I was telling Kinzinger that they didn't like out, and let's just see if we get another ruling and or they can learn anything, because they need to know where the expert is. And I'm telling you, it's not in the regular fields that are being pushed upon the people today. I'll get it out. Hang on. All right, here we go. Bill, you should know with your training as a doctor which system of the body controls the rest. So let's just talk about that for a minute. The nervous system controls what? Take the stress off of the nervous system, what do you suppose you will get? Now, you do have to understand that not everybody focuses on those little holes that are between the vertebra. There's the intervertebral frame and down the spine. They're all looking at that. Imagine this if you can. Too little motion between the head and the atlas, yes, causes too much motion between the atlas and the axis. And this motion is not the normal no motion, but instead an abnormal flexion of the atlas on the axis. This happens because the head is subluxated or partially dislocated in relation to the atlas. Now, what do you suppose happens when the atlas tilts forward as it does when the head is stuck like that? With all your knowledge as a doctor, you should be able to figure that out. Now, where is the dens located? Are you thinking yet, Bill? What I have just shared with you is not a chiropractic concept. This understanding is exclusively an NSIR concept, nerve signal interference removal. Is this understanding what should be taught in chiropractic and medical colleges alike across the country? Absolutely. So I'm going to let you look at the rest of that, and that is on my YouTube channel, or they can bring it back here either way. But that was exactly what Grandpa was explaining, is that too little motion between the head and the atlas causes too much motion between the atlas and the axis, which causes, you know, everything in there to be in a bind, and it creates nerve signals that shouldn't be produced, is out of time with need, out of sync with need, and tells the brain will tell the body to do things that are kind of crazy, is exactly what the facts are. Does healthcare understand that? Does medicine, chiropractic, or osteopathy, or even massage, or anybody else, do they understand that? No, but it's very simple. It's very simple. And let me show you one more time. I'll get the bones out so you can see it. Hold on.